Okay, so today we're doing a little bit more with equivalent ratios. You're on lesson 5. It says, let's investigate equivalent ratios some more. So today's just a little more practice with what you already pretty much know. So it says, all ratios that are equivalent to AB can be made by multiplying both A and B by the same number. For example, the ratio 18 to 12 is equivalent to 9 to 6 because both 9 and 6 are multiplied by the same number 2. So this here should look very familiar with what we did last class. So if I start with the original ratio of 9 to 6 and I multiply each of them by 2, 9 times 6 is 18. 6 times 2 is 12. So that is going to make them equivalent. Now, the book explains it by multiplying by a fraction, but I am going to do it real quick with you where we have been dividing. So if I have the ratio 9 to 6, and I divided each of those by 3. Okay, so 9 divided by 3 is 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2. So what they're highlighting to you is as long as you multiply or divide by the same number, it makes the ratios equivalent. Okay, so now you saw this when we did our practice the last class. So it says, is 18 to 15 equivalent to 9 to 6? The answer is no. So if you start out with this original, and I multiply 9 times 2, that's how they did get 18. So that part is correct. But is 6 times 2 12? And the answer is no, it is not 12. So 9 to 6 and 18 to 15 are not equivalent because you are not multiplying each of them by 2. So you are in your book, you are on page 29. And we are going to be looking at a real tuna casserole. So I'm going to read the recipe for you real quick on page 29. It says, here's a recipe for tuna casserole. Here are the ingredients. 3 cups of cooked elbow pasta, 6 ounces of tuna, 10 ounces of chicken soup, 1 cup of shredded cheese, and 1.5 cups of French fried onions. Then they give you some instructions. Combine the pasta, tuna, soup, and half of the cheese. Transfer it to a baking dish. Put the remaining cheese on top. Bake for 30 minutes at 350. During the last 5 minutes, add the French onion, and then you let it sit for 10 minutes. So that's the recipe. I brought the recipe over to my next slide, and it will be there the next few. So it says, what is the ratio of the ounces of soup? Okay, so the ounces of soup to the cups of cheese, to the cups of pasta in one batch. Okay, so I'm going to look at the recipe. And my ounces of soup are 10. My shredded cheese is 1. And my pasta is 3 cups. So I need to put it in that order though. So my soup was 10, that's this 10 here. My cheese was 1, that's the 1 that you see in my ratio. And then the pasta came last, so that pasta number needs to be last in the ratio. So the answer to number 1 is 10 to 1 to 3. That is what you're writing on page 29 on number 1. All right, so now you're going to turn the page to page 30. And it says, how much of each of these ingredients would be needed to make? Now, it is very important to know that that is the original recipe. So you are always going to be multiplying or dividing or whatever they ask by 10 and 1 and 3. So that is important to know as we move through A through C. So letter A says, twice the amount of casserole. So you're going to divide all the numbers here by 2. So 10 times 2 is the 20 you see. 2 times 1 is the 2 that you see. And then 3 times 2 is the 6 that you see. So for letter A, you write 20 to 2 to 6. All right, now letter B is a little more complex. So they want you to take half of the amount. So when you take half, you divide. Okay, so what we would do is we would do the original recipe of 10, and we would divide that by 2 because we're taking half of that. So that is how I got 5, and that's this first one that you see. Then you're going to do 1 divided by 2, which all of us know that's half. If you take 1 and you divide it by 2, there's 2 halves, right? So that's where I got this half that you see right there. And then the next one would be 3 divided by 2. Okay, and that 3 divided by 2 makes 1 and 1/2 if you were to do that math. So then it would be 1 1/2. So for letter B, you're writing 5 to half to 1 1/2. That is what you would write right there. And then for letter C, they want you to multiply it by 5. So you would do, remember the original recipe was 10, 1, and 3. So you would multiply 10 by 5 and get 50. You would multiply 1 by 5 to get 5. And then you would multiply 3 by 5 to get the 15. So for letter C, the ratio that you're writing is 50 to 5 to 15. All right. So now I'm on number 3. What is the ratio of cups of pasta? So I need to know pasta to ounces of tuna for 1 batch. So the pasta is here. The pasta is 3. And the tuna is 6. Now remember that I told you guys if you can reduce in ratios, you always have to reduce. So you can divide each of those by 3 because 3 goes into 6. So 3 divided by 3 would make 1. And 6 divided by 3 would make 2. Or you know that 3 is half of 6. So for letter 3, you're writing 3 to 6 equals 1 to 2 or 1/2. All right, so now we're on number 4. And it says, how many batches of casserole would you make if you use the following amounts? So if it gave me 9 cups of pasta and 18 ounces of tuna. So here's the pasta, which is 3, and the tuna, which is 6. Well, I know that 3 times 3 makes 9. So 3 times 3 is 9. And I know that 6 times 3 is, 3 is 18. So if I'm multiplying each one of these by 3, there's 3 batches. So under letter A, put 3 batches. Now for letter B, it's telling me, well, now I'm dealing with 36 ounces of tuna and 18 cups of pasta. Okay, so what you're trying to figure out is how did they go from 6 to 36? Well, I know that 6 times 6 is 36, right? And then that was from the original recipe here. Now I got to think of, well, 3 times what makes 18? And the answer is 6. So if I'm multiplying each one by 6, that's 6 batches. All right, so now we move, you're still on page 30, and we're going to do number 1. It says the ratios 5 to 3 and 10 to 6 are equivalent ratios. Then it says, is the ratio 15 to 12 equivalent? So the answer is no. If I were to do 5 times 3, I would get 15. But if I did this 3 by 3, that's 9. That's not 12. So this is not equivalent. So you will write no. 5 times 3 is 15, but 3 times 3 does not make 12. That is what you're writing for number 1 on page 30. Okay, and then this is the end of it. We're on page 31. It says the ratios 5 to 3 and 10 to 6 are equivalent. Is the ratio 30 to 18 equivalent? So the answer is yes. So if I do 5 times 6, so this number times 6, I get 30. And if I do this 3 times 6, I get 18. So that checks out. Yes, that is equivalent. So on number 2, you will write yes, 5 times 6 is 30, and 3 times 6 is 18. Now it says, we'll give 2 more examples of ratios that are equivalent to 5 to 3. So what I did is for 5 to 3, I did each one of these times 3, and that is 15 and 9. So that's how I got this one here. Okay, and then I did this 5 to 3, and I multiplied them by 4. Okay, so 5 times 4 makes 20, and 3 times 4 makes 12. So that's how I got that one right there. And then it says number 4, how do you know when the ratios are equivalent and when they're not? And the answer is, well, you need to multiply each side by the same number. If you don't multiply by the same number, they're not equivalent. So go back to the meet and start your practice.